What's up? It's Tom. Thanks for being here. We got a full slate of games, actually bonus with one of the minor league teams having a doubleheader today. And I want to do kind of like a mini Twins 5, throwing out some topics that have been on my mind, in addition to touching on all these games. So let's get right into it. Starting off with a just embarrassing, pathetic loss from the Minnesota Twins. I mean, fingers crossed this is the worst loss of the year, but there's so much road ahead of us. Something tells me they'll top this. Twins lead 7-1 in the bottom of the fourth inning and basically immediately start to give it back. But still, had a commanding lead still. The Astros, give them credit for chipping away. It was 7-5 entering the ninth inning. They tie it up there and then win it in extras. You can see by the Fangraphs win probability chart that unfortunately the Twins had this thing locked up and it completely slipped away. There were so many things here. You can't pin. This was a team loss. You can't pin it on any one guy. It felt like the Twins went into getaway day mode. To be completely honest, once they got a 7-1 lead, it just seemed like, all right, Sunday, boys, let's wrap this thing up and head on to Kansas City. And they got beat. The Astros didn't. It's not like the Astros were, had some kind of crazy fire either. They just kept chipping away and taking advantage of opportunities and hanging around in this game. But yeah. Just did not feel like the Twins had any kind of sense of urgency again in this game. And, one of the big decisions that's going to come under a microscope was that Rocco Baldelli decided to pitch Joan Duran in the eighth inning, and he looked really, really good. And then he went with Griffin Jax to try to protect a 2-run lead in the ninth inning, and that did not work out. So first off, let's kind of just take a look at that. Hard to revisit this. So again, Twins leading by 2 in the ninth inning. Jax gives up this 2-run home run to Jordan. And then let's hear Rocco talk about the decision with the bullpen there.
What went into that?
Just matchup-based thoughts. That's it. We've done that a lot over the years. That's not something that's abnormal. Durant threw the ball as good as I've seen him throw the ball probably ever. That was about as crisp and sharp for him. The stuff, excellent. And Griffin Jackson, one of the best relievers in all of baseball. He's going to close games for us too. I don't point to that for in any way for what happened. It just wasn't the outing for Jax.
I mean, tough to disagree with anything there from Rocco. I think it's really easy to question why, hey, Duran looks so good in the eighth. Why not just roll with him in the ninth? But I kind of see what Rocco's saying, that, when Griffin Jax is there, you wouldn't assume that that's going to be a problem. So I have a hard time digging too deep and getting upset about that. I have more of a hard time with how okay Rocco Baldelli seemed. Early, to give him credit, earlier in this post-game conference, he talked about how tough a loss that is going to be, and that's going to stick with a lot of guys and all that. But again, I don't feel, and I've said this already many times, I don't feel like there's a big sense of urgency with this team. And I think there needs to be, to put September behind them, and I think they keep allowing that to linger. Now, if they would have won today, that would have been, I think, would have been 4 out of 5 games they would have won. They would have won a home series against the Astros, heading away to Kansas City. I think they could have felt pretty good. And I think maybe, that could have been a good momentum builder. Instead, they blow a 7-1 lead. They have a 3-6 record heading on the road. I think this was a decently big game for the ninth game of the season. We'll put it that way. Now, again, I've said this before too. I'm usually the person who's, preaching patience and, saying how small samples and individual games only matter so much in Major League Baseball, and just to sort of trust the process. But I guess what I'm admitting through the early schedule here is I don't trust the process. And that's why I am a little more restless than usual this year. Anyway, we got a lot else to talk about, so I'm not going to go too deep into that game. The Twins did a lot of stuff good, and again, they built that 7-1 lead. There's a lot of good stuff happening there, and, the lineup didn't continue to tack on, and they missed some opportunities, but when the lineup scores 7, you can't really complain about that. Chris Paddock really should have taken advantage of the run support he got. I don't know what's going on, because if you look at his pitches and his stuff, everything looks pretty good, but to me, it seems like he's having a hard time getting the ball down. I don't know if maybe they're just having him work up in the zone, and that's a strategy, but I don't think he has very good command right now. He gives up 4 runs, 3 earned in 4 innings. You would have liked to have seen him pitch deeper into this game and pitch better, given such a big lead, a 7-1 lead. Unfortunately, he did not, and it attacks the bullpen. Matt Wallner with a 4-hit game. Carlos Correa had a hit and 2 walks. Trevor Larnach drove in 3 runs. Again, there was some good stuff in here, but gosh, what an ugly, awful, terrible, no good, disgusting loss. They blew a 7-1 lead. Yuck. Let's move on. We're going to circle back. A couple of my Twins 5 topics are going to be related to the Twins. So we're going to circle back to them, but let's jump over to the Wind Surge. They played a doubleheader today. They split. I want to call it Ricardo Olivar threw a guy out trying to steal. He's a really interesting prospect, but I don't really believe him as a catcher, so I just want to show him some love there. Rosario, this was impressive. A bullet hit to the opposite field. It's still early in the year. It's still cold. You see all these guys wearing long sleeves. Pretty chilly out there, and he had no problem hitting that one out. Ben Ross, who was honored as the best defensive infielder in the system last year, a homer is here. So good to see out of him. A lot of guys on Wichita could really use a hot start, though that's a couple of them. So would be really good to see them catch fire because they've started out slow. Lots more Kernels highlights today. And Kaelen Culpepper, he's been a little bit behind schedule. He was slowed during spring, so he came out of their first game early and then sat on the bench in their second game, so I was wondering if there was something more there. But no, he started today. Here he gets a triple, a little generous. It was a wind-aided, a sun-aided triple, but hey, still a triple. Good job on him for hustling out of the box on that one. That was in the first inning. And then Billy Amick went off. He was just killing everything. I think he had a bunch of exit velocities in excess of 100 today. That's not available publicly to us for whatever reason, but the broadcaster was relaying some of those for Wisconsin. Billy Amick, 3 for 4 with a walk. He had 2 doubles and a triple. So he was just destroying balls out there. Second round pick, 60th overall in last year's draft out of Tennessee. Could really be a menacing force in Cedar Rapids this year. I think he's pretty advanced, and I think he might be a guy who really crushes here and might be challenged in Double-A, but we'll see. Gabriel Gonzalez, he struggled last year, but he had a great game. 3 for 5 with a double and a home run. Almost a diving catch there, but it falls in. Great game. He was acquired in a Jorge Polanco trade, Still only 21 years old, so no really reason to give up on him, but really a poor first impression in the system. Hits a home run. That's pretty a big deal because he only had 4 home runs in 76 games last year with the Kernels. Had a 706 OPS last year, and this is a guy whose biggest asset is his bat. So that was a pretty disappointing 2024. He even had a diving catch in the outfield. Defense will never be his calling card, but nice to see him make a play there. So shout out to Gabriel Gonzalez, I called out those guys in Wichita who needed a good start. This guy needed a good start too, and it looks like he's off to it. So minor league starting pitchers didn't have any highlights from anybody. Wasn't real motivated to grab anything. Should call out that Michael Ross outing. I don't have video of, or else I might have pulled that up. He pitched really well. Unfortunately, with the team the Muscles were playing, don't broadcast their home games, so nothing available there. Randy Dobnak, 5 shutout innings for the Saints. 1 hit ball was his kind of trademark, effectively wild self. That's how I would put it. 75 pitches, walked 4 guys, struck out 3. I think he kind of knows when to challenge guys and when not to. Dobnak, I would put it. Savvy. And then on the hitting side, didn't show you any Saints highlights. They lost today. Didn't have a whole lot to share on them. We are going to talk about some of their guys in this Twins 5 segment coming up later. But those are the minor league hitters that stood out in all these games. Again, the Wind Surge had a doubleheader today. There you see, again, another detail of Gabriel Gonzalez's huge game. Demiri Pena had a home run. He's this guy who's often compared to Luis Ariz for his contact ability. He never strikes out. He's got a high average. Not known for his power, but he had a home run. Cool to see him with Fort Myers. I'm really excited. Again, they didn't have video of their game available, but I'm really excited to see him a lot this year. Definitely going to be a guy I'm looking out for. So the results for today, Sunday, everybody loses at least once. The Wind Surge did win one of their games today, but everybody lost at least one game. Some painful late losses as well, not just the Twins. So Ouch. So let's keep going. Again, I was in Duluth for a while and I wasn't able to record some videos, so I think there's maybe some stuff I wanted to touch on that we didn't get to, and just some bigger picture stuff that I'm actually going to be monitoring. These are going to be just really things I hone in on. So number one, Twins starting pitching. We're going to run through these pretty quick, but here's the length, how many innings each of their starters has thrown so far. And Pablo Lopez is the only guy who's gone more than 5 innings so far. So this is supposed to be one of the big strengths of the Twins, and they are near the bottom of the league in innings pitched per start right now. So this really needs to change. It's really frustrating that Chris Paddock spotted a huge lead today, couldn't deliver more than 4 innings. I've had his back, Chris Paddock, 'cause I do think he's a completely reasonable 4 or 5 starter on a major league team. There's nothing wrong with having him in the rotation, but if David Festa continues to throw the ball well, Zebby Matthews in particular has looked amazing. They're going to start breathing down his neck, and he's got to play well. He carries a big salary, so he's not going to be going anywhere, I don't imagine, but you could always throw him in the bullpen, and I think he could be pretty valuable there. So we'll keep an eye on that. Number 2 on the Twins 5, the Saints rotation. This is a calendar look at how they've played, and it's been weird. I was interested to see how their rotation was going to shake out, and it's been tough because they've had 4 postponements so far. So as you see here, a couple of guys have thrown out of the bullpen. Travis Adams and Corey Lewis have thrown out of the bullpen. That line on Friday, that was a doubleheader. So Mark Arraez started, David Festa started. They're not eating innings a ton either, but this is the minor leagues. You can kind of expect starters to not go too deep, especially earlier in the year. But I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on how that rotation unfolds. And this early season schedule with all these postponements has really thrown a monkey wrench into it. And then Randy Dobnak rejoining the rotation also makes some things interesting. But that's how that's shaken out so far. Number 3, the Cedar Rapids infield. Speaking of being curious about how things shake out, definitely wondering how they manage. They have 6 guys in that mix, that infield mix, and I'm curious how they manage them all. On their opener, they had Danny De Andrade, DH, and Brandon Winokur in center field. We're going to see that a lot, to where Winokur is going to be playing outfield and somebody else will be DHing. But again, Kaelen Culpepper being a bit behind, sat on the bench on Saturday. And then De Andrade and Rain Downcohen. Downcohen had a big game on Saturday, had a big home run, and then he sat today. So this is actually even crazier than I imagined it was going to be, with Rain Downcohen playing first base and a bunch of guys getting some days off. So that's going to be interesting to see how that rotation shakes out in Cedar Rapids. Number 4, just a check-in on the big 3 prospects so far. Walker Jenkins off to a slow start. It's only been 2 games with Wichita that he's played. Only 2 games, so he hasn't done anything, but still very early. He's only hit was a single. Manuel Rodriguez hasn't really hit for power. He's striking out quite a bit, but a 435 OBP, that's nice. Luke Keeschel, he's off to a great start. A 458 OBP, and I think his OPS is in the 800 range, 7 for 20 with a double, 3 walks and 3 strikeouts. He's looked good, and this is his first exposure to AAA. It's a teeny tiny sample for these guys, but nice to see him off to a good start. And then the final item, back to the Twins and their lineup. Overall, ranked 26th in batting average, 29th in on-base percentage, and 27th in slugging, which is obviously awful. They're doing this weird opposite day thing compared to how they usually have been the past handful of years. They're actually doing pretty well with runners in scoring position, 4th in batting average, 14th in on-base, and 4th in slugging percentage with runners in scoring position. 9-game sample here we're talking about, but the only big change the Twins made this offseason was to their hitting coaching. So was curious to see how and will continue to be. There's nothing real big conclusions to draw from this, but it's just an interesting takeaway from their first 9 games here. But overall, really slow start for the lineup. So we'll hope that does not continue and things pick up. Thanks for checking this one out. I really appreciate you. No video tomorrow. I usually take Mondays off, and I'm also writing the Twins Daily Twins game recap tomorrow, so I'll have my hands busy with that. But we'll be back with a system recap on Tuesday. We'll talk again soon.